You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. All right, welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry. With me today, I have my good friend and co-host, John Matola. How you doing, John?
Very good, thank you.
Good. All right. If you want to keep up to date on the show, you can subscribe on iTunes or whatever podcast software you use. You can also subscribe on YouTube and click the bell for notifications. We're also on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Links to all that are at deeppurplepodcast.com. You can also contact us at info@deeppurplepodcast.com. And to support future episodes on Patreon, to help new people discover the show, you can leave us a rating on iTunes. All right. Probably butchered that. Sounds like we know what we're doing, even though we haven't done any of this before. And truth be told, I don't even know how to upload a podcast. So I'm going to figure that out after we record this.
Oh, that's great.
All right. So this is something we were texting about a couple weeks ago and telling you my ideas that I've had this bubbling up in my mind for a while to do a podcast on Deep Purple because there's so much material out there. And the interesting thing is I was looking for a podcast on Deep Purple so that I could listen to one. And lo and behold, I couldn't find a single podcast on Deep Purple. All I found was episodes of individual podcasts. So I thought, well, I guess I got to call up John and see if he wants to do a podcast on Deep Purple since we've talked them for years. So,
yeah.
So for starters, I wanted to just kind of talk about how we got into Deep Purple, what our history is with the band. And I don't know if I actually know how you got started on Deep Purple.
Yeah, I was thinking about it because in, preparation for talking about it tonight, I can't remember how I got into them. I mean, I have an idea of how I got into them. Like I have my early memories of listening to them and everything, but it was probably like when I first got into music, when I was like 12, 13, whatever. And I was like, I started off like listening to hair metal because that was like the late 80s. So it was like, Poison and bands like that. And the magazines that I picked up at the time, like Hit Parader and Circus, of course, they all had those bands in there, but they also would have like a nod to like the older bands, like they still covered like, Aerosmith and Black Sabbath and Deep Purple and, bands from that era, which were, at the time only like 10, 15 years before. So,
Right.
they would have like pieces on there, like, the classic albums by Deep Purple or whatever. So, they were always kind of in the background or somebody was mentioning them as an influence. And they just, just like how I got into any other band that I was into, they just like something interested me about them. And so I think I got like Deepest Purple, which was like the compilation.
Oh yeah, like a greatest hits sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, which was like, I remember the cassette had like, it was like this generic album cover. It had like a guitar on the front with like, a purple light around it or something. It was really kind of stupid if you think about it. But I mean, the track listing had like all their greatest hits and everything. And so it, I think it started off with Speed King and, and I mean, I had heard like Smoke on the Water. I mean, I don't think anybody hadn't, but I mean, I had heard like all their other stuff and I was just like, wow, this shit's heavy,
Yeah.
and and then I was like confused because then halfway through the album, like Stormbringer was there and I'm just like, why does Ian Gillan sound like that? And it's like I didn't know what was going on. It's like I was like, I didn't know anything about the band, but just like anything else, I got my hands on like more issues of like my favorite magazines and stuff at the time, and like just like learned about them, however you learned about things back then, and just like got way into them, and then I guess that's when I met you, I guess you got into them as well.
Well,
So,
I think I got into them from our mutual friend Paul. Um, and of course, I'd heard probably Speed King and Smoke on the Water and Hush, which I
mm,
didn't I don't think I even knew was Deep Purple, but you just kind of hear it on B101 or whatever the oldie station was that we were
yeah,
listening to. Um, and for the longest time, I thought that was Ian Gillan singing that song because I had no idea. And I remember Paul had what was it? Nobody's Perfect, that live
yeah,
album.
yeah.
And I think he had that. He didn't have the Perfect Strangers album.
Hmm.
So I didn't really know the material they were playing on the live album. Then he had Who Do We Think We Are?
Yeah.
So I remember being over at his house and listening to that and him probably mentioning that he had heard about it from you or whatever. And just listening to that, I just remember that Nobody's Perfect album where they're Ian Gillan and Ritchie Blackmore are trading, like, he's singing his guitar solos and singing
Yeah.
for his guitar solos, probably furthering the hatred that they had for each other. Just, like he's singing along, like to all the notes that he was playing, and I could just see like now knowing what I know now, just probably see Richie just hating it. Um, and then
uh,
they would like trade off lines and stuff, and Richie would play something and Ian would sing it and back and forth, which was pretty cool. And then I really got into Who Do We Think We Are,
yeah.
like a lot, which is funny because looking at like documentaries and things now, everyone like Deep Purple aficionados kind of scoff at that album. They say it's not
Hmm.
any good, or oh, they were just phoning it in. But I still
Yeah.
really love that album. I think it's really great, and maybe because it was my entry point. And then from there you got into In Rock and Machine Head and stuff like that, and then
Hmm.
just kind of that was it. Like for a while, just listened to those albums and didn't really know anything about before or after Ian Gillan and Roger Glover.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was my entry point was the greatest hits, and I
Hmm.
kind of followed whatever, like the history that I read about them, or whatever, like the what I was reading about them at the time was just like, these are the classic albums you have to have. And so I would like go out with my allowance and like buy them
Hmm.
and just be like, mesmerized by, like, it's just like, oh, and like In Rock's the best album, which it is. I still think it is. It's one of the great early albums and everything. And then I would go to like these like used tape stores and um, like record shows or Salvation Army. And when I found like them, like the albums before, like like Mark One, like the first three albums, I thought I was gonna pass out. I'm like, oh, I gotta get to hear like early Deep Purple, and it was like, and I thought like, oh, this kind of stinks. It's just like that kind of like '60s, like just bland '60s rock,
Yeah.
which not all of it's bad. I actually liked the third album, like before they, you know, did the concerto album, before they,
Yep.
the other guys dropped out. I actually liked that one the best because it was the most interesting.
Hmm.
But, not my favorite period of the band, from, I mean, that's the reason that it's not everybody's, is because it's really not the most interesting. It's like I've kind of tried to get into it, but
I think it's like early. Uh, it was they hadn't quite kind of hit their stride yet, and uh, like recently, I listened to all three of those albums again, like just with a fresh perspective of not
yeah,
probably having not listened to them in almost 20 years.
yeah,
Um, and it's you just catch these little glimpses of like you can hear like particularly Richie, John, and Ian locking in and thinking, oh, that's it, that's actually Deep Purple, that's the Deep
mhm,
Purple that I kind of know and love. And
yeah,
you can hear these little segments where these flashes of genius, and but there are a lot of covers.
yeah,
They're doing, I think it's on one of the albums they do like Help, like, but it's like
yeah,
7 minutes long. It's because they
yeah.
slow the tempo down, which is a cool idea. Like the slowing the tempo down is something that John Lennon had always said he wanted to record that as a slow, sad
Yeah.
song because it's a cry for help, and the record label like, no, it has to be poppy, speed it up. So they were kind of like almost making a nod to what he originally wanted, but at the end of the day, I don't think John Lennon wanted a 7-minute song there.
Yeah,
Um,
which is funny because like that's one of those songs that I didn't even know it was like somebody else's song until later, you know?
right. It's when somebody covers a song like that that's so out there. I mean, I always used to be like a purist. Like, if you're covering a song, it's got to be as close to the original as possible. And I don't think that anymore because
Mm.
why bother if it's exactly the same? But when sometimes these bands do a cover that's so far out there that it's like, why didn't you just write new lyrics and it would be your own song? You know what I mean? Like, sometimes the chords aren't even the same, and you're just like, if you just wrote your own lyrics and sang them with the same melody you're using, you'd have
Hmm.
your own song. Like, and you'd be able to get royalties from it. So it's a weird
Yeah.
it's weird that they did that. But yeah, listening to those early albums, I only heard those way, way, way later.
Yeah.
And that was definitely like learning that wait, Ian Gillan wasn't the original singer. This is crazy. Um,
Well, because when we like, I think like I want to say that's how we met because like you knew Paul from way back and I met him in school
mhm,
and we all liked Deep Purple and I remember I liked going to his house and listening to Deep Purple
yep.
amongst other things and watching the Princess Bride and whatever the hell else we did, like, just laying out like, sheets of like, art paper and just like sketching like,
Oh,
stuff,
yeah,
which,
yeah.
and so I just remember being up there and I don't know if you were there too, but it was just like maybe like you, me and him, like, in his house in the summer with that air conditioning cranking, on like a hot day or whatever. We'd be like, I remember we'd be listening to something like, it was, maybe it was Made in Japan or some Deep Purple album, and they'd be like drawing pictures of Deep Purple, and it was like, or all stuff that was like related to that era, of like music. I think I remember like around that time, that's when I thought that like Stormbringer and those albums were like really, um, you know, um, exciting. I really liked those a lot because I mean I thought it was fascinating because it's like, when you work your way backwards, it's just like, oh, I only knew David Coverdale from like Whitesnake, and then it's just like 80s Whitesnake. And then I was like, oh yeah, there was Coverdale from the 70s, and then like you're just like, wow, that's he made some cool music. And then and then this is how we branch out, and then that's how you discover Whitesnake, and Tommy Bolin, and then all those other projects. And like actually I remember that's how we discovered the Butterfly Ball,
Hmm.
and Jesus Christ Superstar and like all that, because it's like, and then from that it's just like you could go on and on, all the
And maybe that's how Paul had gotten, because we were very much into Jesus Christ Superstar like in early high school, and we
yeah.
just listened to it nonstop. And I think Paul had probably gone like, back then when we didn't have the internet, you just I don't even know, I can't even remember how you used to find things out back then,
Me
but
neither.
somehow you found out that oh my God, Ian Gillan was the singer that Jesus Christ from Jesus Christ Superstar had a band, and you're like, what? That's crazy. And then
Yeah.
you found out, oh, it's Deep Purple, and you go and you to your record store and find that's probably when he just perked up the first album he found, which was probably Nobody's Perfect, and we listened to that and thought, wow, this is it's weird hearing Jesus in a rock band. And he recorded all that, I think, when he was either just in Deep Purple or right before he even started with Deep Purple, between
I
like,
think
so
so.
like it's just weird to think of that. And as far as like it wasn't until we started hanging out that I even learned about that there was a Mark III and a Mark IV, and um learning that David Coverdale was in Deep Purple like completely blew my mind. It would be like, I don't know, learning if Jenny Lane had previously been the lead singer of you know Iron Butterfly or something. It was just a weird. It was like the guy from Whitesnake. He was in Deep Purple. Like, what? and then when you played me Burn and Stormbringer for the first time, that went from like just a passing interest in Deep Purple to absolutely being in love with them. Just
Yeah.
like that era. And I know it, we probably are sounding like jerks to the older generation who are like, how do you guys not know this? But it's the way that we discovered this in like this weird haphazard order. Um,
Yeah.
and hearing that music is what really pushed me over the edge. And I have huge love for all eras of Deep Purple, but that is that to me is always going to be the best stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it was just like, back then, like discovering all of it just made it all exciting. You know what I mean? It's just like, it was like discovering new bands, within like one band,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know, they were like, they all had that common thread running through it, but then it was like, which was, um, I mean, up until Tommy Bolin, which was like, Ritchie and like, the, the rhythm section, all pretty much was like, they sounded this, I mean, it was all sounded the same, you know what I mean? That was like the running through, but I mean, even though like, Ritchie from the first album and Ritchie to like Stormbringer were completely different, because like completely different songwriting and everything like that. But it was like, I don't know, that documentary you sent me, it was just like, they were just like, there was one part of it where they were just like, oh, it was like completely different bands. And like, I don't know. And I never saw it that way, you know?
Right. And you can see how you would see that now looking back. That's like, it's almost crazy that they still called it Deep Purple, because it did kind of change every time. Like,
Yeah.
it's not really consistent. Like, it's every Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3, and Mark 4, every one was very different than the other one. You've got the consistent three guys, and the changing of the bass player and the singer and the guitar player just really just changed everything each time.
Which I always thought was interesting, that it's just like, I always wondered like did they like purposely change the singer and bass player like twice? It's like, what are the chances that happens? It's just like, I don't know. When I was younger, I was always like, is that a thing? Like, what is that?
Yeah, why do they always come and go in pairs, right?
Yeah, yeah,
It's a strange setup.
yeah. But I think the most interesting thing about that is like, what we were talking about, and I think what you wanted to base a lot of the podcast on, is that like all of like I think I touched on it earlier, like all the kind of offsprings of like, music that we discovered. I know that I discovered from Deep Purple, because there were so many people, and it was like such like good music too. It's just like when I was listening to it, it was like I don't know, like the extended jams and everything, and like, it was like prog rock, but it was interesting to me, because I'm
Right.
not really a prog rock person. Like I could listen to like, like a 10-minute Deep Purple song. I could listen to like, Child in Time, or any of their extended live jams or whatever, but I couldn't listen to like, like Yes,
Yeah. I mean, I do get into that like a little bit. Probably dip my toes a little bit more into prog rock than you do, but
Yeah,
like Ian Gillan band is like straight up prog rock,
yeah.
But
But I mean, it's accessible for some reason, and because it's Ian Gillan, I guess,
yeah, and yeah, I mean, yeah, we could have a whole, and probably will have a whole episode on Ian Gillan band alone, but um, coming back to Butterfly Ball, I remember that really distinctly. That's where you and I probably lock up the most
Yeah.
in our love for Butterfly Ball, and learning, like I remember you playing me, might have been Sitting in a Dream or something.
Oh,
Like that's like Ronnie James Dio. Like what?
yeah.
How is that possible? Because I only knew him from Dio and from Black
Yeah.
Sabbath, and I didn't even really know Rainbow that well at that point. It just blew my mind that he could have that side to him. And then later on discovered Elf, and just like, how is this the same guy?
I
Like,
know.
couldn't believe it. And that's the kind of level of layers to this band that I really want to explore, and why I think you could literally have almost unlimited episodes of a podcast just exploring all these people that are tied into Deep Purple, even in some way,
Oh
um,
yeah. Oh
and
yeah,
it's not even
absolutely.
like a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon sort of thing. It's like a 1 degree, like Ronnie James Dio was in Rainbow with Ritchie Blackmore. Ronnie James Dio was on the Butterfly Ball. All of these people are connected by one. If you get 2 degrees out, you're probably talking like 100 bands. If you get 3 degrees
Yeah.
out, you're probably talking every band that's come out of England in the past 50 years.
But I mean, I can't even like, I can't even like remember where I like, and it wasn't even like, a conscious thing, it was just like, I had read somewhere that like, Ian Gillan was in the movie, which it must have been a misprint at the time. Ian Gillan
Oh,
was,
yep.
he was supposed to be in the movie.
Right,
Um,
but you had like some tour schedule thing or something. That's what I
right.
heard. Yeah.
Right. So I went out and like, went to the video store and like, like looked for the Jesus Christ Superstar movie and like watched the whole thing and didn't see him. And I'm like, what the hell, man? And I'm just like, who's this guy? But wound up
Even
like,
when Jesus came on, like you were like waiting, like, well, maybe he's playing a different part. Or...
yeah, yeah, like maybe there are two Jesuses. I don't know. I didn't know what to think.
when he rises from the dead, he's Ian Gillan.
Yeah,
Wait
exactly.
till the bitter end.
But then that like started my obsession with like Ted Neely and like seeing him on like the '94 like revival and going to meet him a bunch of times and like finding a solo album like at this at a Salvation Army and stuff, and then the Yvonne Elliman who played Mary Magdalene was like she also had a disco hit and she like sang with Eric Clapton, and then it's just like, and then I liked Eric Clapton, and then it was just like, what I mean, it can just keep going on and on.
Yeah.
And like not just with that alone, and then like and then even other people from Jesus Christ was Superstar, like who was the guy in it, Murray Head, who had
Yeah.
like that who had that hit in the '80s.
Yeah.
And
One
like
night. Well, it's from the musical Chess, right? One Night in Bangkok.
yeah. and
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
and I remember like years later, like maybe like 10 or 12 years ago, like I was out like in a club with my friends and like it was like a retro '80s night, and I heard that and they're just like and I was like, oh, this is a great song, and I looked it up, it's like Murray Head, like a guy from Jesus Christ Superstar. So even years later, it was like it was still blowing my mind, all these connections of people that I had like heard before, liked them in something, or how they were related to like this band, you know
Yeah, and I mean, I think all music is like that, but I don't think there's another band that's as intertwined with all that stuff as Deep Purple, and that's what has always fascinated me.
yeah.
And like prep, like I've been kind of doing homework on getting something like this started for a while, and just I mapped out a spreadsheet of all just the people that are in Deep Purple and all the albums they've been on. So if you take every album Ian Pace has played on, every album Ritchie Blackmore, every album Ian Gillan, every member of Deep Purple, just that alone is like 350 albums. Not
Wow.
not including live albums. So, I didn't even include live albums in that. So and that doesn't touch any of the people that have passed through that. Like that doesn't even go. So that goes all of Rainbow, but it doesn't branch off to Ronnie James Dio, and it goes to Ian Gillan Band, but doesn't branch off to whatever Ray Fenwick was doing. So like there's all of these avenues you could take off of there, and it's got to be thousands of recordings and live shows and everything else. And I mean,
Yeah.
just the people I'm honestly, if we were gonna do like a review or a I don't even know, like a discussion on the Butterfly Ball, I could see that going 5 or 10 episodes. Just, and I'm not even joking. Just like
Yeah.
you just take the first song, like, and who played on this? Well, what bands were they in? And I mean, then you could go through all that, and then you could talk about the movie / live concert of the Butterfly Ball. And there's
Which I
just,
still haven't seen.
well, that's going to be something we'll have to. I mean, we could just watch that and record. You should maybe just not see it,
Yeah.
because it would be great to see your reactions to it in real time,
Reaction video. Yeah.
because it's insanity.
I mean, that was like I mean, let's talk about not being able to find that stuff. It's just
Oh.
like I mean now, right? Where did you find it on YouTube or something?
Well, originally I had it came. They released it on DVD. I want to say it was 10 or 11 years ago. I think it was like right before I got married,
Hmm.
and my wife got really into the butterfly ball just because she had no choice really because I would play it all the time. But she really liked it, and because it's I mean she loves quick uh poppy songs, and that album, God, the songs are like 2 minutes 3 minutes in and out and just
Yeah.
intertwining with each other. And um so we had listened to that, and when it came out on DVD I said we got to watch this, so we watched it. And just it's the when they say, like, if you could have dinner with anyone living or dead, who would it be? Like, if I
Yeah.
could be at any, like, if I had a time machine, I would waste it. I wouldn't go to, like, oh, I'm going to go see the Battle of Waterloo or whatever. I would go back and watch the concert they put on for the Butterfly Ball, because
Wow.
it is the most amazing concert you could possibly imagine, with everybody just David Coverdale walking on stage singing a song and then going like this and walking off, and then all of a sudden Ian Gillan's on stage singing Ronnie James Dio's parts because he wasn't available for whatever reason. um,
Wow.
and it's just incredible. However, unfortunately, they whoever they are decided that that wasn't good enough. They had to, dress people up as rabbits and film them like hopping through the woods and intertwine that with the live footage of the concert. So you're watching this amazing, like, they have these extended jams on some of the songs that are unbelievable. There's this violin player that comes in and does these violin solos. I don't even know who it is.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And then they cut to like some people dressed up as animals having a tea party in the forest, and you're just like, and filmed like with a budget of practically nothing. um
Wow.
and all you can think of is like, just like, you're just kind of trying to like see if you can look around to see if the concert's behind it. um and it's but it just the music alone, and if you just listen to the audio of it, it's really cool performance, and seeing what you can see of the concert makes it worth it, despite the fact that there's a lot of weirdness going on.
Well, I mean, it was probably par for the course at that time. The weirdness. But yeah, I would love to see it. I mean, especially after the way you've hyped it up, because, like, I mean, I remember like finding out that there was a movie of it, and I didn't know what the like. I remember not knowing what the movie was, but I wanted to see it,
Hmm.
and so like I drove down, I drove down to my local Blockbuster. Why would
Thinking you
they
could
have it?
find it, yeah.
Yeah, thinking at first, so I looked all over, and they had this book. It was like this. It was like as thick as a Bible, and it had like and it was like and like the print was like as big as like a phone book, and I would like flip through it, and it's like you could find, like, they didn't have it, but you could find like any title in
That it
this. So
existed.
now that I'm wondering why, I don't know why the hell they even had that book, because it's like you'd be like, oh, do you have this? And they're like, no. I'm like, why do you have this book here? So it was like, so I think I remember finding the butterfly ball in it and just being like, oh, do you have this? And the guy was like, what are you, some kind of weirdo? Like, what is this? I've never heard of it before. It's like, do you want to rent True Lies, or something? I don't know. And I was like, and so, yeah, there's no, and now you can just dial it up on, like, YouTube or something, or do a quick Google search and probably find the whole thing, or just order from somewhere. But, back then it was so hard
Oh
to
yeah,
find things.
and then when my parents had gotten the internet really early when I was like in high school, and then they got rid of
Wow.
it for like a while, like to the point where it's like didn't even matter, because there was, there were news groups and stuff like that. And
Yeah, it wasn't anything. Yeah.
no, you'd go like, I remember just like going on a website and like finding the script for, it wasn't even a website, whatever it was, like a news group, and I found the script for like an Indiana Jones movie, and I was like, great, and I printed it up, and I'm like, then what? Why did I do that?
I did
So
have to
that's the kind of things you would
stuff.
do. And but I remember like there were certain like news, I know, like I don't even know, list serves and things like that, and you could sign up for newsletters that were all in like the ASCII. There'd be like an ASCII graphic at the top, and then you could scroll down, and there'd be like updates on Deep Purple, and there was one called the Bottom Line for bass players and things like that. And
Yeah.
um, but I did remember like in the early 90s, doing some of that stuff. And then when I was in college, I think my parents had gotten the internet again for like a second time, but it was like, ooh, this is more advanced. There was like actual web pages. It's probably 1995.
Yeah.
Um, they I remember like you could search, you go to Alta Vista or whatever, or Hotbot, and search for like find these, and it was actually great. All these GeoCities pages of like fans just putting up stuff, and there
Yeah.
was no audio or no video really, but it was just like just memorabilia and pictures and stories and things, and that's where you'd learn kind of that some of that stuff. And there were some websites where you could order, and I explained this to some like at work, like to some of the younger people, and they I don't think they really believe me, but there was like um you could find like this, like you could find the butterfly ball there, and it would be like you'd have to like print out the order form from the website and then write a check and mail it to the person, like
Oh,
whatever, and they could send it to you. It would be overseas, and it would take like 8 weeks to get it.
jeez.
And it's kind of crazy to think, even though I was an adult while that was happening, that actually was how it worked. And I don't
Yeah.
never really did that, but my parents, when I was in college, took one of their anniversaries, a trip to England, and I all to Europe, but England was all I was concerned about, because I was like, go to Tower Records and buy these CDs. And they did, and they came back with the extended version CD of Butterfly Ball with the tracks from Wizards Convention at the end, like 6 tracks selected.
Wow.
Um,
Wow.
and just being like, and there was a few other albums, I can't really remember what, but that was the big one, and just being like, wow,
You know
I've
what? I
never,
remember that. I remember that now.
because
You were like,
previous to that, I had a copy cassette of whatever you had, and it didn't have Little Chalk Blue on it for whatever reason. They
oh,
left that off the cassette, and you had the legit cassette for that was purchased, but
I think I have. I think I might still have it somewhere. The I don't know if I had a cassette. I definitely had the CD.
yeah, and they didn't include Little Chalk Blue, because that was the first time I had heard this. Imagine hearing this album that you love more than anything for
Yeah.
years, and then hearing, oh my God, there's a song that from that album that isn't on the album I have, and hearing that for the first time.
Actually, I'm starting to wonder like if because I mean I have like I should dig through the next time we talk, like my boxes of cassettes and find them, because I know that I must have had a cassette version of it, because I remember getting the CD version or a CD version when it came out and hearing like extra songs
Hmm.
from that, and like being the same way, like it blowing my mind, being like, there's more songs, it's like, and it was awesome. Um,
I still think of
so
Little Chalk Blue as the new song. Like I just
the new song
I heard
from
it,
like 40 years ago.
yeah, 20 plus years ago that I heard it for the first time, but I'm like, oh, that's
Yeah.
the new song from this album.
Yeah. But it's yeah, this is like turning into the butterfly ball episode, because
Yeah,
it's
that
like
was bound
that's
to
what
happen.
more the most excited about.
But
Well, it's
it's crazy that they did as much music as they did for so long, and hearing some more recent interviews with them talking about like Ritchie Blackmore being at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction and not being there or whatever, and Ian Gillan saying, well, Steve Morris has been the guitar player in this band for 25 years now, like, or
yeah.
almost 25 years, like he's played in this band way longer than Richie has, and this is the band as it is now. And granted, I know very little about the most recent Deep Purple.
Yeah.
I've heard some things here and there, but I'm open to exploring that with an open mind, and hearing that some of that stuff for the first time, and hearing what it's all about.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't listened to much of it, but I don't, I've heard some stuff about, that Hall of Fame stuff, but it's like, I don't buy that, because like, that, I mean, yeah, he has been the guitar player for like 25 years, but I mean, you know, is that really downplaying like the fact that like, Richie was like more influential? I mean,
Sure.
like you have the same Kiss fans have the same argument too. It's just like, oh well, such and such, the new guys have been in the band for this long, and like the original guys weren't You know, it's like, yeah, but that's not the point. You know, the
Right.
point is like who was more influential. It doesn't matter who's a better player, who's there now. I mean, it's like, I don't know. It's like, to me, it's like, you know, Steve Morse is not as interesting as Ritchie, you know, at all. You know, I don't think he will ever be. You know, I mean, it's just like, that's all personal preference too. You know,
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
like, you know, he doesn't like he doesn't wear a pilgrim hat. He doesn't demand to play at dusk and you know, storm off stage and like, you know, it's like all this. But I mean, just the fact too, it's like, you know, the like, I think the thing that really like made, you know, what do they call him, the Man in Black, you know, because he
Yeah.
was always, you know, because he seemed like an old man even back then, and he must have been like, he was probably like 28 or something. But it's like that Denmark 1972 concert
Yeah.
was still, it's like, I mean, I probably watched it like over the years, like, you know, like and I have like a DVD copy. I had gotten a DVD copy since then because I
Yeah.
got like, you know, a bootleg VHS copy and watched it like nonstop.
Wasn't that place in like off of Route 44 that used to sell the bootlegs like across from Apple Valley?
Um,
They used to sell like all sorts of bootlegs. I remember we would stop in there and pick up stuff, and I seem to remember you got it there, but
Either that or was like at a record show or something, you know, because they would have like
oh
you
yeah.
know, record shows, and they'd have like, you know, all the guys set up around there with like their boxes of records, and then like, you know, just like the little like, you know, like 12-inch like TV with the VCR under it playing all their bootleg tapes and stuff with the homemade covers and stuff. And I think I still wonder if I still, yeah, I probably still have it back here with my VHSs with like, you know, and like the what is it, the Dymo label thing, you know, that says like
Yeah.
purple live in Denmark on the side that's like peeling off now, and
Yep.
I would have no way of playing it, but I do,
I've
you
yeah,
know, that over the year, that concert I have played it like more times because it's still one of the best shows like by any band I think I've ever seen.
fantastic. And that I think was the first video thing that really you had played for me, watching
Yeah,
that in your basement and just being like blown away. I just remember Ian Pace's drum solo, and that is just incredible. And I'm not like a real huge drum solo guy, but
yeah.
I was just floored by his drum solo on that. And I feel like the one in California Jam doesn't quite hit that same point, but
Yeah,
Ian Pace.
California Jam was like, you know, probably number two, you know, but or three, but you know, in like some of my favorite concerts. But that live in Denmark is like, we could do like, we could and should do a whole show on that one because it's like
Hmm.
Richie's guitar solo in it. I was just like, it was like mesmerizing, you know.
Yeah, yeah. His that whole show is incredible. I mean, that show and California Jam alone could easily have their own episodes. Uh, but yeah, their live stuff is great, and they do so much. They do so many live concerts and so many interesting things that you don't necessarily hear on the albums. And I've never seen them live. I mean, I've been a Deep Purple fan my pretty much my entire conscious musical appreciation life, and I've never seen them live.
I think I've seen Deep Purple proper live one time, and it
Really?
was
When was
like,
that?
it was it was years ago. I'm pretty sure it was like at Great Woods, or I think it was still Great Woods at the time.
Hmm.
And I want to say that John Lord was already out of the band.
Okay.
Um,
So it'd have been
so
like 2000s, 2002, 2003.
it was like early 2000s. I definitely went with Derek.
Yep.
Uh, you know, he was definitely involved somehow. I remember like it just kind of being like at that point I was like, okay, I'm glad that I saw them, but even at that point, like the early 2000s, I felt like it was kind of, I don't know, like sanitized from what I was expecting, you know,
Mhm.
because like, you know, I was like, you know, expecting like, you know, like 20, 25-year-old Deep Purple, you know what I mean? Of course, they were like middle-aged guys by then. Ian Gillan came out and he looked like, you know, he just, I'll never forget. He was wearing like just all white, you know, like he looked like he was a cabana boy or something. Like he just like, you know, he just came back from vacation in the Bahamas. He's like, all right, let's do this so I can, you know, go back and, you know, like, you know, drink out of a coconut or something. It was like, and it was just kind of like, it wasn't as high energy. And I mean, I get that now. Like, I
Well,
mean, it's,
yeah, they're
if I see an older band, I don't expect them to, you know, jump around like when they were like 20. But I mean, at that time I was kind of disappointed, but it's like, at least I can say that I got to see him,
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
whereas the Glenn Hughes show that I saw in September was like, you know, I mean, I definitely prefer like, club shows to like, stadiums or um, what is a step down from that? How come I'm missing the word? Um, I don't know, like just like larger venues,
Yeah.
like I haven't seen too many things in stadiums, but I mean like arenas. That's it. Yeah, arenas, stadiums. Yeah, like I'll see a show in like a club or a bar or something like that. Like especially these days, because I mean that's most of where my favorite bands play anymore, or musicians, which is fine, because I like it because it's more intimate, it's more like I guess raw, and that's like Glenn Hughes was the same way, it's just like they're probably like a couple of hundred people, you
Yeah.
know but I mean it was awesome, and I mean he still brings it, and
He still
that's
has
what
an amazing amount of energy for a guy in his early 70s. It's
yeah.
incredible.
Yeah, and I mean it's just like the music was true to what it should be, and it's just like, and you know what, I can't even say anything about Deep Purple now, which is why like I should listen to some of the albums or see some of the shows and see how it stacks up to something like that, because I know what my preference is,
Right. Right.
for a live show, and so I won't pass any judgment now, but I just remember my you know 20 something year old self like seeing Deep Purple in the early 2000s was not um, very impressed, but I got to but I mean it was the same with some other bands I saw like there. I think I saw Jethro Tull, and stuff like that, um, the Rolling Stones, and it didn't really have any effect on me,
Yeah.
just because like I was always of the mindset, just like you, if I could go back in time I would, instead of just enjoying what was in front of me, which is what I do now.
Sure.
But yeah, I did get to see them, but it's just like I don't remember anything really standoutish about it.
Right. And then they're gonna play some of their new material, and if you're not listening to that newer stuff, it's harder to you don't really know. I remember when we went
Yeah.
to go see Dio.
Mm,
It must have been like 97, 98 or something,
mm-hmm.
and how incredible that was. And that was in the Strand, so that's probably a few hundred people max.
Yeah.
And what a great performance he did. And I gotta admit, a lot of the material was newer stuff that I didn't really know, but it didn't matter. He was just what a amazing performance it was.
Yeah. I mean, I was lucky enough to see him like a bunch of times, like in those venues, and it's like, even when he's like, all right, something from the new album. I like only with him, I never hated the new album, because it was like he was he was always great. Whereas like if somebody's like, no, a track for our new album, I'd be like, boo. I was that guy. Boo, play the old stuff. Like, no,
Oh man.
something for another. Boo, play Smoke on the Water. It's like, get off the stage. I was such a jerk.
Well, hopefully they didn't hear you.
They probably didn't. Uh,
Oh man. Well, I think we have a lot more to talk about that in the future.
mhm.
Um, what time? What's the timestamp here? Where are we at? Okay, we're at a good spot where I think we can move on to our next segment.
Okay.
Um, well, we got in the news here a few, and surprisingly, like Google just kind of spies on you and figures out what you're into. So my Google News feed, just stuff about Deep Purple pops up all the time. So I see that Ritchie Blackmore and Rainbow getting back together. They're going to release a new version of Black Sheep of the Family. What do you think about that?
Oh boy. Um, I mean, I'm open to it. But I mean, that was never one of my favorite Rainbow songs.
Yeah,
And just from what I've been hearing and a couple of YouTube clips, which don't really prove anything, is that like Richie isn't really bringing it lately. So it's like, if that's true, then I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be any good. Like, rather
it's
you.
interesting that he would get the band back together and then do a version of one of his old songs that's actually a cover of another band's song. Like it's like it's a strange thing that you would be like, oh, we're gonna get Rainbow back together, and it's gonna have
like
Ritchie Blackmore is gonna be the only person that was from having to do with Rainbow, so you could just say it's Ritchie Blackmore. They're just
yeah.
doing an old Rainbow song. He's doing an old Rainbow song.
Well, yeah, do Man on the Silver Mountain or Catch the Rainbow or something, And it's like, and then you'd be hard pressed for anybody to like do a Ronnie song and like do it justice.
Yeah, that's a tall order. So let's
Like,
see.
I don't know anything about his vocalist now, but I mean, he better be good if he's, doing any Ronnie stuff. That's all.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's see if this works here. You see that? So
Yeah,
we got. Oops. I don't know how to
probably
make it. So
probably one of the hokiest album covers in the world.
yeah, it's very weird. Like thinking like oops. Rainbow is a very funny thing for a heavy metal band, right? Like
Yeah.
rainbows are not that badass.
Yeah, but somehow these guys made it work. I remember just being like even though it's kind of a hokey-ish album cover, with the guitar being a castle, it was just kind of like I was obsessed with this album cover.
It is a cool album cover, I got to admit. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's cool because I remember it from being a early teen,
Yeah.
or if it is actually cool. Like I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if I saw this for the first time as an adult, would I think it's cool?
Maybe not. You'd be like, ugh.
But so this is the song. It's by a band called Quartermass, who I remember seeing about all the time when reading about like extended Deep Purple people. Quartermass was always brought up.
Yeah.
So this is the song. Now here's the original. Have you ever heard this?
I'm not getting any audio
Oh,
from it.
you can't hear this?
No.
Oh boy. I'll have to figure this.
You know what? I didn't even know that Black Sheep of the Family was a cover until a few minutes ago. So Quartermass was what, like a '60s band, or?
Yeah, they were like let's see here. They were they were a band. Well, they were a band. I think they were contemporary, like maybe late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm hearing this. I don't know. You're not hearing it though?
No.
Kind of ruins the effect for you.
Totally. It's like, yeah, I could totally hear how different this is.
Maybe if can you hear that?
Mm-mm.
No.
No, we can always, I guess we can always fix this in the future, but,
Yeah. Well, that's
um,
interesting. The interesting thing is
I can listen to it later. And
the interesting thing is it doesn't sound that different. I mean, it's pretty close to the original. But yeah,
yeah,
we'll have to figure out that screen sharing thing later.
but I'll take a listen to it later because I've never heard that, like the original one, which kind of speaks to what you were saying earlier about like why would you record a song like that is exactly like the original,
Right.
you
Like,
know
what's the point?
which is funny because it's like I mean look at what like when I told you about like the Ian Gillan band's version of Child in Time, which was
Yeah. Yep.
same singer, awesome. It's just like he could take it to like with any other musicians he wanted, and it's still Ian Gillan singing it, but it's like he totally changed it around, and I love that version. I think I've listened to that version more than the original, like in the recent years, because it's just like so cool.
It is a really cool version of the song. I hadn't heard it until a couple weeks ago.
Yeah,
For some reason, that album eluded me. I heard
yeah,
Clear Turbulence a million times. Scarbus I heard a few times, but I missed that first album somehow.
yeah.
Also, in the news, we got this one annoyed me, so I'm not even going to put a link to it. But you get these. I don't know. You must get these too all the time in Google or whatever, which is like all these gossipy websites like, oh, so and so said something, and you read the article and it's always like complete exaggeration of what really happened.
Yeah, I get it from I subscribe to like Blabbermouth,
Mm-hmm.
which is mostly like rock and metal, but it goes to this era as well.
Right. And there was an article just about like, oh, David Coverdale reveals an untold secret about Deep Purple, and I'm like, well, we'll see about that. But so
And what was it?
so I clicked on the link, and it is a really cool story, but it's just a clickbaity headline because it's like, this is not a new secret. I remember when talking about reading those listservs in like 1993 off of
Yeah.
Prodigy. I remember reading about this, but talking about how Ritchie Blackmore and Ian Pace were like jamming with Phil Lynott from Thin Lizzy. They were going to start a power trio.
Oh yeah.
This is like in between Mark II and Mark III, I think.
Hmm.
So it's a really interesting story. And I remember thinking that they actually had records and stuff, and looking for years trying to find it, because how great would that be? But they said that, I read in an interview that Ian Pace said they did record it, but they never, who knows, it's probably gone, lost forever or whatever.
Mm.
It's just like a few jam sessions, but it just annoyed me. It's like, it's not an untold story if I read about it on the proto internet in 1993.
Yeah.
But I'm sure it's not a very super well-known story.
Well, I mean, it's at least it's juicier than like if you were just like Coverdale tells an unknown secret, then you click on it's like Ritchie Blackmore is hard to work with. It's like everybody knows that. Boo.
Yeah, it's a little. I guess it's a step up from that.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of cool because, well, think about it, right? How many maybe younger fans than us maybe never knew that because
Sure.
maybe that was floating around the proto internet back then, and like nobody's told that story in a while, so maybe they just kind of dig up you know some old stories and throw them out there because there's really nothing new to tell. You know. I mean, and Coverdale has probably got a lot to say these days because he's promoting the new Whitesnake album and tour, which is actually, the new songs sound pretty good. So, just FYI.
Yeah, I would definitely be interested in listening to that.
Yeah, sounds very '80s Whitesnake. So, I'm all for it.
So another thing that was out there, which I think that you will really appreciate, and I don't know if you saw this, but there is a reissue coming of Malice in Wonderland.
Wow, and I don't think I've ever heard this.
So you didn't hear this, like about the reissue?
No, but I don't think I've ever heard the. I mean, I know of the album, but I
You
don't think
never heard the Malice in Wonderland album?
I don't think so. No.
Oh man, it's great, and it's, just seeing. Oh, that's Phil Lynott. I don't know that, but there's something of them live. Tony Ashton was just out of his mind, but I think this is after he'd gotten sober.
Hmm.
And they got together right after Deep Purple split up and
Hmm.
did a tour around, and really it's hard recognizing John Lord without his sunglasses on,
I know he looks kind of pissed.
and he has like a beard instead of just a mustache. It's just kind of.
No, wait a minute. That's Ian Pace with the beard over there?
Yeah, Ian Pace with a beard, and then John Lord, but I think
John Lord with no sunglasses. Well, he
but
was very.
that's
He
got
was
to be
very
John
like
Lord, right?
on the right, on the upper right. That's John Lord.
And then this one, yeah. Well, John Lord's in the chair with Tony Ashton, and then Ian Pace is standing.
Okay. Well,
By
I'm
the
not.
beer.
Oh no, I'm not. I'm not seeing any of that. I'm just seeing the album cover and the back cover.
Oh, maybe that's why.
Ah, okay.
Okay, so we're learning some good
All right. So this is being re-released. This album.
yeah, it's being like a reissue. I think it's coming in May.
Okay.
So here we go. That's maybe a better.
Oh, there we go.
You can see that. So yeah, that's
Oh
what I was.
wow, yeah. Okay, yeah, that doesn't.
So
That
see
doesn't look.
Tony Ashton there. I don't know what he's doing. It looks like he's holding up a phone, but obviously that's not the case.
Look, reading the lyrics off a phone. Yeah,
And
look at him.
there's John.
There's a man.
Some good stuff there, and then we got them all there around the organ, and then there they are. There's Ian standing up by the mirror.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Tony Ashton's a strange frontman. I mean, I love Tony Ashton so much, but it's so funny that he was a frontman. He's just such a loose cannon.
An oddball, yeah.
He's an oddball. He's a real oddball. But it's a great album.
So what would you describe the music as?
Oh man, it's got like that kind of rollicking piano from Ashton, but then you've got John Lord's organ. There's horns, so it's got like kind of like a R&B feel to it.
Okay.
There's some really great. I mean, it starts off with just some really rocking songs, kind of almost like an Ian Gillan band kind of feel, which, is really interesting. And then probably my favorite track on it is "I'm Gonna Stop Drinking." That's a really, really good song. Just about his struggling with stopping drinking, about Tony Ashton. But it's a really, it's a really good album. And he had also done like a big band album with just Tony Ashton and John Lord when he was still in Deep Purple.
That's cool.
So yeah,
well, I'll have to definitely check that out.
Yeah, it's some good stuff. Then finally, I think there's one more news piece here. No, I think that was it actually.
Oh.
For news. So I don't know if I can't get this music working, I can't do my game. I want to do this game where I take a random snippet of a Deep Purple thing and make you try to guess where it's from and who it is. But I'll see if I can get this working real quick. If I can't, I'll just give up. So we got it here. You'll probably be able to see my cool placeholder. I had to here it is. I had to make a placeholder so you couldn't see what the file name was or any of that.
Okay.
I'll see if you can you hear that?
No.
Okay.
No, I think you have to work out the bugs.
So that's something we'll figure out for next
time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay. So I'll keep this on hold for episode 2. And I think you'll really enjoy that one.
Okay.
And actually it'll be thematic for episode 2, I think. It might even work better that way. Yeah, so I think that's all we got for this week. Yeah, so next week I think, just for a little sneak peek, I think I've got a lineup of some early Deep Purple stuff before any of the members of Deep Purple were in Deep Purple. And we were talking earlier the other day about it's not like really our favorite style of music these days.
Yeah.
Haven't been listening to a lot of 60s stuff.
Yeah.
Especially, 60s stuff is pretty hit or miss.
Yeah, I mean, it's let's face it, it's very dated right now, a lot of it. It's like it's not that it's not listenable, but it's like not really what I want to hear all the time.
There's certain things from the 60s that hold up really well. But a lot of the mid 60s to late 60s stuff is pretty tough. And then even from bands that went on to be popular or went on to be successful. But so I all of this stuff is going to be between like 64 and 67 or 68. But from a historical standpoint, very interesting hearing the backgrounds of where all these guys were coming from and to kind of just analyze some of that music and see what it is that they were up to before they actually formed the original Deep Purple. So we can go through that and see how far that takes us. And if we get through that, we can start getting into some of their albums and some of their early stuff and hopefully get through that quickly so we can spend a 10 episode arc on the Butterfly Ball.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, this was definitely like a good like first. We were kind of all over the place.
Yeah. Well, I
Um,
think some of my favorite podcasts are all about the tangents,
yeah, for sure.
just 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 talking, just kind of seeing where the conversation takes you. And
Hmm.
like I was saying to you the other day, like even if we have two listeners, just getting to talk to you every week about Deep Purple and kind of catch up and talk about some of the old stuff, and just in depth learn a few little tidbits, this certain areas where a lot more than me and vice versa, and kind of learn some more about the band and about what we love about it. That's all I'm interested in from this. I don't, if we have, as long as we have like 5 listeners, I'll be happy.
No, I want like I want to blow up. I want to blow up the
There's
internet.
I mean, there could be a reason why there's no Deep Purple podcasts, right? But like
Yeah.
I haven't even found an old one that stopped making episodes. Sometimes you feel like, oh, this podcast looks really cool. Last episode was in 2011. All right,
Yeah.
well, I haven't even found that. So like, somebody's
Well,
got to be interested in hearing a
well, either
discussion about Deep Purple.
nobody was good at it or nobody gives a shit. So, but I gotta think that somebody cares, I mean,
Right? Yeah, yeah.
so I guess
It's
we'll find out.
there's got to be people out there. If there are, we will find them.
Yeah, well, they'll find us.
All right. Well, until next week, and we'll do a fake sign off. Okay. Until next week.
Um,
See you. We
that's
need a
it.
catchphrase. Until next week. That's it. Bye.
That's good. That's good. I like
That's good. I think that's going to stick. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. And we'll talk to you next week.
it. Good night.
Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also give us a rating on iTunes to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.